Hi, I'm Charlene Bowden. Welcome to Virtual Conversations. Joining me today is Andrew Nemr. And I could give a politically correct introduction of Andrew, but after thinking about this amazing creative person who I've grown to just embrace as family, I thought, I can't do that. I cannot do that to Andrew, can't do that in this space. So what I will say is that Andrew and I met at an intersection of culture, of identity, of faith and love and the gospel, of course, because we're in the Seeds Fellowship. So that's where Andrew is. That's who he is. That's who I am. So that's where we're going to start. Andrew, I am so excited to have you join me today. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So let me first, in front of everybody, apologize for missing your show when you were here in Atlanta. That was the most heartbreaking thing for me. I wanted to be there so bad. But how was it? And what did you, well, first of all, tell people about it, how it was, and was the mission accomplished?
Sure. So I was in Atlanta for about a week. We had a run of shows at the Art Farm at Serenbe for a project called Rising to the Tap. It's a solo show, autobiographical. I co-wrote it with a dear friend and colleague, Adam Copeland, and Or Matias, who's a phenomenal pianist and composer, wrote the music for it. It's a performance scripted show where I include lots of stories about my life, about uh, where my folks are from, Beirut, Lebanon, where I was born, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, coming into tap dancing at a very young age, being basically adopted by the tap dance community at a young age, at 10, 11, 12 years old. Um, and some of the challenges that I faced over the course of my life on account of uh, I don't know how to best say this, maybe not cleanly fitting into any one particular place. And the show went really well. We hadn't performed it since 2019 on account of
Okay.
all the challenges in the performing arts world with the COVID-19 pandemic. So I was super nervous coming in, um, being in front of a live audience, intimate audience. The venue at the art farm was very, very close. The front row was maybe 3 feet away from me on
Wow.
stage. And there's some hard stories that I share. And so when you're doing that and there's another person that's very, very close to you, um, sometimes I get worried about, like, what are they going to take on? Are they going to be okay with me sharing this like
Mhm.
this closely?
Yeah.
Very different than in a large theater where the audience is in the dark and you can't really see them. You see like
Uh,
a silhouette, and so you play really large, like you exaggerate all the stories so that hopefully it can reach them. But in this case, it was, I saw people's faces the whole time, and that's a different experience. But thankfully, the feedback that we received from the show was phenomenal. And that that's kind of uh, it helps refill the tank.
yeah.
You know, you for performing artists specifically, and I'm sure this happens in other spaces as well. When you're giving, there is a kind of depletion that happens,
Mhm.
and oftentimes we don't know what the consequence of our giving might be.
Mhm.
In the theater, you have 100 people, 150 people, a couple hundred people. There's no way that you'll be able to track the impact that what you do has on all those people. And so, uh, coming out of Atlanta, the feedback that reached me was all good, and that was really sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you did a wonderful segue for me. Um, Rising to the tap. I was making some notes and just rereading some things and thinking about it. It's like there's something in that name. So what is it in that name? And for those, I don't know, maybe 100 or so people who have not yet heard of Andrew,
Oh gosh. Oh
when they
man.
see rising to the top, what do you want that to do to them, for them, in them, through them, to compel them to be more curious and maybe to come or to engage with you? What's in that
Hmm.
name?
Yeah. So one of the underlying themes of the show is just this struggle that I've experienced over the course of my life, where I grew up in a very loving family. My parents are both dedicated followers of Jesus. And so I feel like I was raised in a place where I was fairly comfortable with who I was
Mhm.
and had lots and lots of room to play and kind of express myself in the home. But I was also raised uh, to be sensitive to others and, kind of have an awareness of the dynamic of relationships, in addition to whatever predisposition I had, like whatever personality traits like lean me that way anyway.
Mm.
And so I go out into the world and I end up in these various different communities, and they each have a way about them.
Mhm.
They each have kind of unwritten assumptions of language and what it means to be kind of the admired person in this community. And so I think, we didn't really get a title for the piece until after we wrote it. It was one of those things that, got
Yeah.
all the stories down. And now what do we call this thing?
Right.
And I think it was Adam that came up with the idea that it seemed like for every space that I was in, I was trying to hit a mark.
Mm.
I was trying to rise to that place within that tiny community that I could be like a really good person within the judgment of my peers. And what I realized, and I don't know, this might be giving away too much of the show, but I dance, so you're gonna have to come and see that.
Yeah.
But I think what I realized was that there's a there's there are certain things, and this was my experience. There are certain things in my life that I had zero control over, that in certain communities would prevent me from being seen as a really good person.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so those things uh, served as fissures. They served as things that like literally separated me from friends and colleagues, and or at least added some tension to the relationship. That whether it was, in my particular instance, something showed up around race, something showed up around um, not as much actually, but some things have shown up around faith. Just like, the broad strokes of a person that says, if I'm going to go this way, or if this is how I show up, can I hit the mark that this community sets
Wow.
as this is who we think is a really good person. And so in the show, I kind of track those stories and try to share to the best of my ability what it's been like for me to navigate that kind of journey.
Wow. I was just thinking as you were, thank you. That was amazing.
Sure.
Um, but I was thinking as you were talking, even though I wanted to forego the formal join me now is, da, 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 da. It's like, well, maybe I should tell people a little bit more about what you do. So Andrew is a
Sure.
master, I say, tap dancer. I'm sure there are a lot of other adjectives that could go there as well. He's a creative being. You are a creative being. You are a public speaker. I'm sure you're a motivational speaker, a coach, a trainer, a teacher, a guide, um, an all-around great guy. Help me out here.
You're sweet. Gosh, man.
No pressure though. Identity. I hear identity coming up a lot in what we're talking about here. I'm with you there. I'm with you there. I think a lot of people are, whether we'll say it out loud or not, we're struggling in some way with that identity. But you had the bravery, and when I was listening to you, I don't know if I had, well, I'm getting ready to do it now. But I don't know if before you said it, if I had the bravery to say, and I'm not going to try to quote you, but to talk about identifying with those circle of people that I'm either drawn to or pulled into, and also being seen as who I am versus who they want me to conform to be invited into their space. That's a lot, Andrew.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
There's so the thing that I've done the most in my life is tap dance, right? I've started when I was 3.5 years old. I never took a break. I am a lot older than 3.5 now. And so it's been a while. And a lot of the things that I now, if I look back, I realize, okay, like, man, this is what I was going through, I think. Um, Tap dancing has been a kind of microcosm for it, like the actual practice where if you go into a tap dance class, there's this dynamic where you're looking to the teacher to figure out what to do. And the teacher establishes a kind of standard. And it's my job as a learner, as a student, to hit that mark. And I know that I'm getting better at tap dancing the more consistently I can hit the mark.
Mm.
But there's this really interesting aspect of tap dance in which the tradition that I come from is very, very focused and kind of encouraging around improvisation and having an individual dancer discover the kinds of things that they like to do and explore new things that they might not have ever seen before. And in doing that, become a contributor to the form.
Mm-hmm.
And so as much as there's a tradition and there's common language and there's all the things that like would create a model for this is how you tap dance, this is what tap dance is, there's also this kind of fringe where once you get rooted and your teacher says, yeah, no, you have enough, you can start to explore and play and you don't need me anymore and I'm going to step back a little bit because I trust you, you get pushed into this place where you try and have to figure out who you actually are, because that becomes the root of how you trust your choices in the form.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And for me, that is very, very parallel to situations in life that I've experienced, whether it's in my family, whether it's in the tap dance community, whether it was at high school or college. Like every place I went, I seem to be drawn to like very, very intense, focused communities of practice, places where people were committed to doing a particular thing. And what I've come to realize, at least I think, is that there's a lot of good that can come from that. And if that community is not rooted in some kind of unifying ethic, like a way of going about their pursuit, it can actually become really harmful and really dangerous. Because as an example, I could become immersed in tap dancing as who I am. Like the fact that I can hit the mark every time becomes the reason I know I'm a really good person. And if at some point in my life or in some circumstance I'm unable to hit that mark, my entire being crashes. And that's a really hard place to live, because there's so many things that can affect my ability to hit the mark, including other people. So if I'm living a life where it's like my state of wellness is on account of me hitting the mark, there is a high potential of me starting to manipulate other people just for the sake of me hitting my mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is definitely not a good place to land.
Yeah. And thinking about these intersections that I mentioned earlier, and I feel like I might know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway, especially after your last statement. Where do you find today that is really kind of your more prominent point in this intersection? Is it culture? Is it faith, love, identity, gospel? Where are you today?
I think the thing that I'm working out the most today is the relationship, because everything seems dynamic to me. It's like if you try and freeze a frame on a tap dancer, you're still not going to really know what the dancing is like. You get a nice picture, but the actual experience of it is experiential. Like you have to be there in the moment, if not doing the thing yourself. And so I tend to ask questions and hold questions and then see where I go. And so I think what I'm trying to work out most today is this relationship between what it is that we believe, things that we act on as if they're true, how we then express ourselves, the actions that we take, and who we become. And kind of the honoring of the deepest parts of a person in that dynamic. So what is it to have language around the health and formation of the soul of a person as we dream about the kinds of people that we can become and the communities that we want to live in and the kinds of lives that we want to have. And so, pursuits like tap dancing or like preaching or like public speaking or, any of the activities or like the things that I can do kind of sit in a different place when they become spiritual disciplines to a degree. It's like, this is a place where I can figure out if I actually believe what I say that I believe. If I'm acting as if the things that I say that I believe are true. And if I'm not, okay, I've got some work to do, or I've got some experimenting to play with.
Right.
I think there's so many areas of life that I've gone through and that I've experienced others in, where we don't ever give ourselves the chance, and we might not have room for it to like check the foundation of the house. By the time we're up and living and kind of might have the awareness to do that,
Right.
things are going really quickly, and we've
Right.
got lots of responsibilities, and it's kind of like, I'll get to it. Meanwhile, we're trying to add a third floor or like renovate some area of the house. And if the foundation isn't solid enough to deal with that, then there can be challenges, and the renovation that's necessary might not be able to happen.
Mhm.
So that's I feel like that that space is an intersection in and of itself,
Yeah.
but it's kind of, for me, it feels like a place of intersections. So it's like I'm going to sit in the middle and call this a spot,
Hmm.
and then look at all the things
Mhm.
that come in and out, and try and navigate the traffic so that the spot, this intersection, can become healthy.
Yeah. Got that. Got all of that. And how you mentioned a lot. And thinking about the fellowship, and as I've mentioned earlier, we are Seeds Fellows. The fellowship is a part of the an offering actually of Luther Seminary there in St. Paul, Minnesota. Um, where, what does gospel look like?
Oh gosh, I like um I like Dallas Willard's kind of treating on the good news, because there's tons of definitions and people kind of focus in on different aspects of it. And I've been kind of in different denominations and heard different preachers, and Dallas Willard was the first cat that said to me, and this is through videos because I never met him personally, but where I heard the good news is access into the kingdom of God for anybody who's willing to follow Jesus. And the kingdom of God is like, just, it sparks all these things in my imagination where, the things that God wants to have happen happens. And so there's this kind of beauty and wonder, and because God is definitely bigger than I am, so there's things that are going to happen that there's no way that I'd be able to do it, and they're going to be good things. And the things that are born of love and that lead to love all come out of these things. And imagine living in a place where that happens. And there's so many things that might prevent me from feeling like I can even go into that place. I'm not worthy. I
Yeah.
haven't hit my mark yet.
Right.
Um, there's no way, like, I don't have the strength for it. I don't know enough. I'm definitely, like, God's not with me. There's something about me that's wrong. There's all these things that can get in the way of feeling like I can have access to that, all that goodness. And Jesus kind of comes around and says, no, 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 you don't worry about that. You follow me. And in the following, all those things kind of like, they fight, right? Because they can be really strong thoughts. So they'll fight, but they will have to ultimately succumb to the truth of the fact that in following Jesus, you enter into the kingdom. And that to me is phenomenal news. Like that, I can't, and it accounts for forgiveness of sins and for the atonement and for, the resurrection being proof that the kingdom exists and that it can be experienced on earth right now. And like, man, it takes a second to sit with that and to like to really get affected by it, because some of the language gets used so often
Yeah.
that you're like, okay, yeah, the kingdom of God, great. I know it's here, and like I've got this other thing to worry about.
Right, right.
And I think for me, allowing myself to sit and be affected by the reality of that proposition, the kingdom of God is here. You can have access to it now. You follow Jesus, and that's like your only focus. Everything else comes along with that process.
Mhm.
Whoa, that's good news.
Yeah. And I I watch you, of course, when you dance.
Mm,
I've watched your videos. I've had a chance to, experience you at the retreat
hmm
that the fellows attended. I don't know any other way to say this, and I'm just going to say it because it's tied into what you were just saying about the gospel, about the good news, about being accepted into the beloved. When you put your shoes on and make that final bow tie or that final clasp or whatever it is, it's as though you have entered into that space of, you know what, nothing else matters. I am naked and I am transparent, not only before an audience, but especially before my maker, my creator, because I am accepted in the beloved, because I know who I am. I know my place and my space. And I am going to tap, I am going to share. The stories that come out of that moment are just, you just, we're there. We're just right there waiting to hear the next thing you're going to say, how you're going to say it. I'm sure you said some things like, did I really say that way? But
Yeah, sure.
because it comes with the territory. But
Yeah.
because we're waiting with every next word you're going to say. And I love music. I'm a music lover. So when I hear the drums, the African drum beat in your tap, it's like, oh, I'm just all in. I am just so in. In thinking about all of that, this now points this intersection of faith and love.
hmm Yeah.
I think that we can move the faith and love to the gospel side. And we
hmm
can move the faith and love to the parents, as you've mentioned that side as well.
hmm
And we can move the faith and love, of course, to your personal relationships, your friends and those
hmm
friends who are now like family to you. Talk more, though, from your voice, not mine. Talk more about that intersection for you.
Oh, wow.
Because I believe it was a journey to get there. From what I'm hearing, it was just like a necessary work, but work is work is work.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that.
Well, I think it's ongoing. There's language for me has a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember, gosh, yeah, I was dating someone in a long time ago now, and they in the course of our courtship, they told me they're like, I would tell them I love you, and they say, well, I don't really know what that means,
Hmm.
and it stumped me. I was lost because I had taken that phrase and those words for granted for my entire
Yeah.
life. So I
Yeah.
didn't even have a definition to be able to share with this person who I said I loved, to let them know what that meant. Even just like something, just like something beyond like watch me, right? Because love is expressed through
Right.
action. So I could say, well, as we go through, hopefully you experience this. This isn't just like a meaningless statement or something that has been emptied out because of experiences that they've had in their life, which happens. But I think again, I kind of keep bouncing back to Dallas Willard because his teachings have been really formative in this way, trying to define words that I take for granted.
Mm.
And so, love becomes, for him, he would say, love becomes willing the good of the beloved.
Mm.
And well, how can you do that if you have not experienced love? You are not emboldened or strengthened by love, and you are not aligned with, connected to, kind of an embodiment of love. And if God is love, then that's where we get that. There's no other place that we can get it in the same way or in its fullness. And so my life has been really blessed because as I heard you describe that moment of me tying up, the tap shoe, and then I stand up and then I come to, and at the Seeds Fellowship, like you saw that. Sometimes
Yeah.
that happens backstage and then I just
Right.
walk out, right?
Right.
So you got to see all the things that happen as I enter into that space. And a big part of that is remembering the amount of love that I received from my mentors
Mm.
and the amount of love that was required for me to like go through the journey. And that love is formed in part by experiences of frustration and anger and loss, and like the natural responses that we have to living in a world where we can know from experience that not everything is good. And so my dancing and the relationships that have come on account of it, I see as rooted in an example of love. And in the times where I felt isolated from that community or kind of had to deal with something on my own in the room, those moments felt, have been markers for me of what communion really feels like.
Mm.
Because there was nobody else that could really know what I was going through. And I didn't have the kinds of relationships at the time outside of the dance community or my family where I could say, okay, here's a person that I know I can trust and share with. So the only cat that I had was God. So, those conversations happened. And that emboldened me in a particular way. Like it shaped my understanding of love in a particular way. And I think if there's anything that I can do to share with people, or maybe remind them if they need to be reminded, that that kind of love exists, and it is available to a person individually and specifically, I want to do that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
because the experiences that I've had have been so like perfect and perfect in the way like when I think about being loved, it's a combination of like being seen and somebody knowing exactly what I need at a particular moment. So like the care is specific and personal and timely. And uh it doesn't mean that challenges go away. It just means that I am cared for in the middle of it. And I've had those experiences with God, and it is mind-boggling that there is a creator of the universe, and that creator knows me so specifically that in a particular moment, the word or the idea of who God is that will help me navigate this next time in my life, like that's the thing that shows up. Or a particular word from a particular person helps me become the kind of person that can care for the persons in my life a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that to me is the kingdom. It's like it's literally all good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
Andrew, is there anything that you have not shared during our time that you want us to know about Andrew, or is there something that you need from us?
Oh wow. um I think two things. As I was coming up, I would always look to folks that I thought had it figured out, right? And one of the things that can happen, and that happened with me with that dynamic, is, well, I literally thought they had it all figured out, and I wanted whatever they had so that I could have it all figured out too. And a dear friend of mine who I look to in that way told me once, he said, I might present well, but it's not always pretty. And so I would want listeners and whoever might come across this to know that, uh, you know, I, like I experience a lot of joy. I experience a lot of love. Life for me, I believe, is all good, but it's not always pretty. And there are really hard times, and there are legitimate challenges, and not to feel like something's wrong with them if they don't hit the mark.
Mm.
Right? There's work that we can do, and there are things in life that will come upon us, and the best we can do is do what we can in light of what we believe and who we know God to be. Um, but I would hate uh, I would hate for the love that I've experienced, or the joy that I've experienced, to become a burden on somebody else, as if they're trying to get to that. and not go through the process that's right in front of them, and land where they need to land and have like a personal experience of joy for themselves. So that's one thing that I would want to share. The one thing or something that I need, prayer. I'll take prayer shoot. and I've been in experiences where communal prayer happens for a particular person.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get a few people listening to God for a particular person, whoa, that is immensely powerful.
Mm.
And so if cats want to listen on my behalf, I will take that. And I will offer that. That's something that I will, gladly do if called upon.
I think you asked for the ultimate request from us. And I believe that is something that you will get a lot of people to do for you.
Sweet.
Andrew, I am absolutely honored that you are in my life, that you are part of my circle, that I'm now one of those intersections that, that can, who knows where to go? That's why we're part of this fellowship also. It's like we come here to go and to grow, or maybe vice versa, to grow and then go. But that's why we're here. And I'm just so honored that to know you. We are such kindreds in more ways than you realize. And I'm glad that you stopped by for just a minute to to pour to water over, to pour out of. I know that some of those places that you spoke from, even if you spoke from those places, for quite a while now, it's probably a little difficult, or even like just have to catch your breath,
Yeah.
and keep doing it. But just know that you bless us so much when you do that. And I want to say that I support you. I bless you. I love you. I look forward to seeing you again the next time. I'll practice my steps, my new moves. I will practice my new moves. But I love you, my brother. I love you.
Likewise, it is truly a pleasure and an honor to know you and to have the opportunity to share. You're right. We don't know what the outcome is. Well, we know what the ultimate outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
But as we go, we don't know. And so to live in the awe and wonder of it all, and to be able to share it with you and with the other fellows, especially on this particular journey, has been really, really special. So thank you.
Absolutely. Onward, upward, my friend.
Indeed.
Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Be well.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.